Hey everyone, welcome back to the Workplace and Apprenticeship 10 videos. In this video, we're going to look at lesson 4 from chapter 7, which is talking about the tangent ratio. So the third primary trigonometric ratio that we're going to study is the tangent ratio. So we use the tangent ratio when we are working with the opposite and adjacent sides in a right triangle. So according to the tangent ratio, the tan of an angle theta is equal to the length of the opposite side over the length of the adjacent side. So once again, this all depends on where the angle is. So let's look at our triangle here on the left, and let's say that angle theta is down here on the bottom. So we're talking about the opposite side. So once again, this is opposite to the angle. So you could draw a line going straight across, and that is your opposite side. Then when we're talking about the adjacent side, that is one of the sides that's connected to your angle, but is not the hypotenuse. So your hypotenuse is this side over here, so your adjacent has to be the side below here. So it's one of the sides creating that angle that is not the hypotenuse. So say if our angle was up top, then our opposite going across here is down below instead, and then our adjacent is on the left here instead. So depending on where your angle is will depend on where your adjacent and opposite sides are. So now we're going to look at a word problem from your notes, which is example number 2. So when sand is piled onto a flat surface, it forms a cone. If the pile is 8 meters wide and the angle between the ground and the slope of the pile is 28 degrees, what is the height of the pile? So once again, just like I've said in my previous videos, whenever I'm working with a word problem, I always like to draw a diagram of what is going on here. So here we're talking about when sand is being piled, it forms a cone. So if we're to look at the maybe two-dimensional shape of our cone, we've got this triangle being formed here. So it says if the pile is 8 meters wide, so from one end to the other is 8 meters wide, and then the angle between the ground and the slope of the pile is 28 degrees. So that's from either of these corners here would be an angle of 28 degrees. So then we want to know what is the height of the pile. So going from the top of your pile all the way down to the bottom, so going straight up and down, we want to know what is that height, and I'm going to call that x. So looking at this picture right now, we have one big triangle here, and this is not a right triangle, which means we can't use any of our primary trigonometric ratios to solve. But what we can do, though, is if we were to look at just half of this triangle, what we would notice is that this here is actually a right triangle inside there. So if I were to redraw this, one half of the triangle, I would actually be left with a right triangle, although I might have to change some of my dimensions. So I'm still looking for that height, which would be x. That angle is still 28 degrees. But one thing that's different is that the height is no longer, or the width is no longer 8 meters. So one thing that, assuming we have a nice perfect pile, this height should be directly in the middle of either end. So in assuming this is a nice perfect cone, this here should be 4 meters. So it should be half of the distance of 8. So now we have a triangle, a right triangle to be specific, and we have our sides labeled. Awesome. So now what we can do is just go a little bit more beyond just the labeling the dimensions. When we're trying to use the tan ratio, we have to make sure that we label our opposite and adjacent sides. So step number 1 was to identify that angle, and then we're going to label the side opposite to the angle, which is x here, so that's your opposite. And then your adjacent is the side that's connected with the angle, but is not the hypotenuse. So this 4 here is your adjacent. So then in order to solve this triangle, or solve for x here, I'm going to start off by writing my tangent equation, or tangent ratio. So that's tan of theta is equal to your opposite over your adjacent. Then we can fill in everything that we know. So we know that angle theta is 28 degrees. So we have the tan of 28 degrees is equal to, so your opposite is x, and your adjacent is 4. So we'll have x over 4. So then just like what we did with our previous videos, is that I'm going to write tan of 28 over 1. That way I have two fractions that are equal to one another. Then when we have that, we can use cross multiplication to solve. So we have 4 times the tan of 28 degrees is equal to x. And one thing that's really important here is that that you guys might notice that I wrote the 4 first. And that's just because I don't want 4 on my right-hand side, so I don't want to confuse it as being the tan of 284 degrees, or I don't try and multiply those two numbers before I use my tangent button on my calculator. So make sure this 4 goes out front, and then tan of 28 is in brackets. And then just to solve for x, all that we have to do is we plug this into our calculator exactly as we see it. So we're going to go 4 times the tan of 28 degrees. And when you put that into your calculators, you guys should get 2.13 as your answer. And here we should talk about our units here, and our units here are meters. So here the question asks us to find the height of the pile, and that was x here. So we have found the answer to this problem, and now we just need to answer it using a sentence. So we could say the height of the pile is 2.13 meters. So that is everything here for this video. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to come see me in class or text me on Remind 101. And thank you guys so much for watching.